Everybody is arguing left versus right, but nobody is asking the actual question of why isn't 40 hours a week enough anymore? So, why isn't 40 hours enough a week? Why isn't 40 hours a week enough anymore? So, yeah, everybody's arguing left versus right. Meanwhile, working 40 hours a week doesn't cover food. And we're not asking why to that question, even though our economic situation and our political one are completely tied. But when did it become normal to work full time and not have enough? That's not an accident. Stay with me here. If you're working full time and still don't have money, that is not a budgeting problem. That is a leverage problem. It's a dependency problem. Because here's the uncomfortable question for most of us. If the system is supposed to reward hard work, then why are the hardest workers squeezed the most, right? Why are we accepting that this is just life? Type me if full-time work still feels goddamn tough, right? Or if it still feels tight, like you can't have any breathing room. We did what we were told to do, all of us. Get skills, work hard, be responsible. But somehow we're still checking our bank account before we go to buy groceries. We have to choose between dental work and, oh, are we going to pay electricity this month? Am I going to have meat this month? Or am I going to go to the dentist? Hoping that the car doesn't break down. Who's been there? God damn it, that's frustrating. But that's not incompetence. That's us being contained. When you're broke, you're stuck. Broke people are worried about survival, not change, right? Here's the part that bothers me, though, and it should bother all of us. Is this accidental? Are we fighting left versus right because we're so stressed, because we don't have any savings, and they keep us broke so we can't fix it, so we can't even think about it? Because if you don't have savings, you can't say no. It's all it comes down to. Can't say no at your job. Can't negotiate. You comply. You say, yes, I will come in tomorrow. I can open. I am able to close. Because you're terrified if you say no, you become expendable. And then you have nothing. So they don't need to keep you stuck. If you don't have money when rent comes due, right? You don't need chains. You don't need handcuffs. Because if you can't say no, who's actually in charge? That's why we all feel trapped. Type no if you feel trapped by that. Because here's what it is. You can't have freedom of choice without money. When's the last time we had real options? Real options. Real local stores not owned by the same corporation. Healthcare that's not tied to our employment. We don't have options, do we? Because consolidation killed it. There's no more competition. Corporations bought everything. But here's the shitty part. None of this happened by accident, right? Because after they took over the economy, they went after the media. And now that the media is in control of the people in charge, now we argue about culture wars, right? We argue about illegal immigrants. We argue about trans athletes. Meanwhile, our bank accounts go lower and lower. The less money we have, the less ability we have to say no. And the inability to say no means they've got more power over us. So we fight over lies. We fight over stories and narratives, and we get mad at people that are brainwashed rather than upset at the people that are doing the brainwashing. Because here's what happens. When we're all divided, we don't coordinate to fix this shit. If you are so broke that you are working every single month, barely scraping by, and by so broke, I mean less than like $50,000 in savings. We should all have like 6 or 7 months worth of savings in an emergency fund. And if we don't have that, we're going to be stressed. They divide us on purpose. And that's what's wrong with America. We're not more divided than we were. We don't have leverage. We're looking around for the reason why, and they use the media to lie us about why. So if you're just joining, we're not even talking politics here. We're just explaining why 40 hours a week doesn't cover the basics, and how if they keep us broke, if they keep us stuck economically, it kind of takes away our freedom everywhere else. Because in order to have freedom of choice, you need money. But it's also why protests don't really feel like they're doing too much, right? Protesting is exactly what we need to do. But damn, we had how many millions of people out for no kings and nothing's happening? That's because if we don't have leverage, protests will never do anything. Protests without leverage is just begging, right? That's all it really is. We're asking for change, but we can't demand it. We can't force it. Because if we are all protesting one day, and then we still have to go feed the system the next morning, if we're all going to buy our groceries or going to work or paying our electricity bill or paying our rent to the same people that are in charge, who is the protest threatening? What leverage are we hoping to flex, right? So power is not in votes. Power is controlling the essentials of what we need to live, of food, of housing, of healthcare, of energy. Whoever controls those things, whoever controls what you need every day to live and function in today's society, controls you. They control your choices. And if a large organization controls your choices, how free really are you? I used to think this was just how adulthood was. That's one of the ways that they get us, right? You get bills, it's stressed out, you're always wondering if you're going to scrape by, and you just hope that it improves. And we were told that once you hit 40, 50, 60 years old, oh, it starts magically improving. Your earning power increases, right? I am getting to it, Sierra. I got like 3 minutes left, and I'll be right there. If you want to join back in a minute, we'll be there in a second. Because what it all comes down to, it's not adulthood. People realize that if your income, if all that you make in 40 hours only covers your survival needs, then you're not in a free market. You can't make choices. You're in basically a dependent market. You're in a controlled scenario where you might feel like you have freedom of choice, but all of the choices are from the same 2 or 3 parent companies. And it's the 1% of people just have to use. So here's what it is. Not protesting. Protesting is how we apply that pressure. We need to upgrade that shit. Every protest should be a recruiting ground for small businesses. Every protest should be a recruiting ground to show people, hey, you want to keep the momentum going? You need to figure out how to not shop at a corporation for the next 5 or 10 days. Oh, that sounds difficult? Well, here are 10 businesses that are local to you that provide food, that provide healthcare, that provide the things we need to live. That's how we take it back. Every rally becomes a place where people leave with one non-corporate alternative. That's it. That's how we build back the leverage. Because honestly, us being able to walk out of their stores and go somewhere else, that shit creates leverage. Walmart employees treat us like crap because Walmart knows they don't need to pay their employees another $5 an hour to smile at us, because they know we can't walk out and go to the local general store. We can't go to Betsy's General Store anymore. They ran her out of business 40 and 50 years ago. So alternatives create leverage. So protesting without non-corporate alternatives doesn't do much, because it's leverage that changes the negotiation. And it's only negotiating and having leverage to negotiate that shifts the power. So that's why we're not about just venting. We are building. Hit me. Type build in the chat if you are feeling that, right? Protest as recruiting ground. People at the rally, they leave with one non-corporate alternative. That's the goal. Hey, we appreciate you all being here, but what we really need. But Wiggin, this is what this is about. If somebody's on the opposite side of the aisle from you, yeah, it's exhausting to argue with them about left versus right. But if you say, hey, hun, it really sucks buying all of our meat from those corporations that pump their cows full of medicine, that don't care about us. I actually found this group of people right in our hometown that's going to buy meat from a local source. And they're going to be pretty much the same price, because we're going to put together a bulk order. Rather than just us buying a cow, we're going to buy like 9 cows and split them up. And that's how we can have local meat for a cheap price and not shop at the grocery stores. You ain't talking politics, right? But if you can get your MAGA husband to have that food that's not from a corporate grocery store, it's just like they dropped out of the system. Because this is what's so amazing about it. We don't need to convince people to use an alternative if that alternative works better for them. And that's how we beat the corporations. This is a small business revolution, because we can beat the corporations not by offering more products, but by caring more, by saying, oh, people in my community need food. I know that there's 5 local farmers. So what I'm going to do is just be the connector. The next time I go to the protest, I'm going to hold up a sign that says 5 local farmers near us. This is how we keep the momentum going. Something like that. And that is how we start showing people that our economic situation is tied to our political one. Sweetie, it's not even a great idea. It's just simply how we create a parallel system so we can drop out of the current one. Because dropping out of something, being able to say no, is the strongest thing you have. And that's what everybody says. Going to be very hard to compete with Walmart. Bullshit. What we need to do is have farmers markets and swap meets in every single Walmart parking lot. You think when we walk in to Walmart and that Walmart employee throws their head back and walks the other way, that if we actually had an option that we wouldn't walk our asses out of there and go shop somewhere else? It is not going to be hard to compete with Walmart. What you're saying is, oh, it's going to be difficult for a small business person to offer as many goods as Walmart does. And that's the rub, right? People are always like, oh, we need to offer as many things. No. Walmart has made us dependent for the essentials, for our food, for our all the little stuff, like our paper plates or whatever it is. So what we really need then is for people to understand that we're not going to defeat Walmart by offering more. We're going to defeat Walmart by caring more. That's what it really is. Because when they are so big, they don't care about us, right? When they are so big, they don't care about us. This is called localism. Localism isn't about a person building an empire. It's about building a business that serves your local community. Because when you have this giant business empire that's built to extract from the communities. Oh, we're not stewards of food. We're going to make money off of the food these people need to live. Oh, we're not stewards of healthcare. We're going to get rich off of you needing to stay alive. What? That doesn't seem like the way to set up a system, right? So localism is somebody serving their own community, their business, small enough to care, small enough to be accountable, big enough to matter, big enough to make a difference. Because when a business depends on you, they behave differently. Walmart treats you like shit because they don't depend on you. If you went to a local general store that only had 500 customers, every one of those 500 customers would get a huge smile when they walked in through the door because you matter. And this is where a lot of people misunderstand it. We don't need 1,000 founders, 1,000 CEOs. We need connective tissue. We need 10,000 facilitators. We're not building companies. We're rebuilding leverage using the economic situation. This is what power really is. And most people underestimate it because we've been told that power is voting. Power is in the halls of Congress. No. A nation is controlled by the people that control its food. People are controlled by those that control their energy and communication. And for us, that's all the same 1%. So this is what we're doing. Like I said, every single protest, every single rally is a small business fair. You show up with, hey, we know 5 farmers that sell direct. Let's get a bulk ordering group of 50 people. So that's where local food distribution, sign up here. That's it, a sign. At a local rally, we're building buying groups. We're taking back local power through buying groups. You throw up a QR code. So that's where it's not a speech. You're not convincing. You're just coordinating. And the more we coordinate and facilitate, we have more options. We can go to the local farmer. We can go to the local doctor. We can use the local lake to generate some power, right? Leverage changes their behavior. That's it. We don't need to take it all back. Somebody said, going to be hard to compete with Walmart. That's because you're thinking we need to offer everything Walmart does. No, the essentials. Eggs and some staples for food. That's about it. Make it so that we're not as dependent on them. That if we can say no, that we're able to. Imagine walking into a doctor's office and saying, I've got 100 people with me on a piece of paper, and say, we want to pay you directly for our health care. We are sick of the health insurance companies. Well, guess who else is sick of the health insurance companies? The doctor. There are many things where there's a stream and it's called a turbine and it's a water turbine. And if the stream is going down, they stick it in between. It spins it and it's been generating power for like 25 houses. So a bunch of people come together, you put a little bit of money up front or the community as a whole buys it because you're reducing dependence on power companies. It saves every single individual person over time. That's where this doesn't need to be a revolution, right? This needs to be small ways to build leverage. Yes, like a local generator. We recruit, but we don't start there. You start with food. You start with healthcare because the farmer doesn't want to sell to the effing corporations. They've been getting screwed over by them for decades too. It's just they don't know of any other system. They've never had somebody show up and say, I've got 100 people that want to buy 12 eggs a week. How much can you sell me 1,000 eggs a week for? And they'll say, are you a corporation? No, I'm just part of my community. And I found out that people in my community are sick of going to the damn grocery store because the people that are in charge of that store lobby to screw us over every chance they get. So we're just going to try to buy it from you, local farmer. And the local farmer's like, hell yes, this is great. I don't have to sell all my stuff to the corporation that's trying to screw me over all the time. I can actually sell it to my neighbors. That's what I wanted to do all along. Same with doctors. Doctors don't want to go through health insurance companies. They want to provide their neighbors with high quality health care at an affordable price. But that's the problem. When we get too big, the company doesn't care. So here's what it is. 40 hours doesn't cover the basics anymore. Because of that, there is no other competition for the corporations. So when we lost options and removed the competition left, that's made us dependent on the system. We don't really have freedom of choice, right? So if we don't have freedom of choice, and freedom of choice is what gives us leverage, we need to build those choices, y'all. That's exactly what we are doing. This is not just about venting, right? So if you are feeling this, we've got the Discord in the bio. So that is where we are coming together. We are breaking out by state. So it starts out by state. You find the people local connected to you. But what it is the Discord is where we start all this. And so come join us in there. So I just put it up. Appreciate you. Appreciate you. So there we go. I just dropped the Discord link. Discord link is also in the bio. So the real question is, the real question is not, will the system change? It's, if we had a little bit more control over our food and our healthcare, could we negotiate better? That's it. We act like it's some big giant conspiracy. It's all just incentives aligning to screw us over. CEOs aren't evil. Corporations aren't evil. They just got too big for their britches and stopped caring about us, right? If you've got 1 million customers, well, 10% of that is 100,000 people. So you could screw over like 100,000 people and still have 900,000 customers. And that's basically what they're doing. They're like, oh, and then if the media told the other 90% that we're screwing those people over, then everybody would leave us. So what we're going to do is we're going to control the media and control the narrative too, right? But that's what it is. If we controlled just a little bit of our food supply, if we had community stewards making sure that food wasn't just there for profit, doesn't that sound like it should be that way already? To make sure that healthcare isn't there for profit, shouldn't it kind of be that way already? It's crazy we allow this. That's where I talk about my 80s babies all the time. We were born into this shit. I mean, everybody was born into this shit, but it's really hard because we only ever saw this corporate America. And that's where I don't think that people need motivation to do this. I don't think people need to wake up. I think that people are awake and we just don't have any mother effing options. We need to build options. Options create leverage. Leverage allows us to actually negotiate from a point of strength. So that's what we are doing. We are giving people permission as connectors, as facilitators, showing people you can act locally. Here's how to do it. I found 5 farmers. Join the food buying group. We need to stop asking, for someone to do something and start building it. Give others permission, right? So we have to remember that everybody's arguing left versus right. But the real divide is between the haves and the have-nots, because that's dependency and leverage. Those who are dependent on other people and those who have leverage over the ones that depend on them. My very sad analogy has been like it's an alcoholic parent. If a parent has trouble with drugs or alcohol, no matter how much that child asks for them to change, they still depend on the parent. And as long as they are dependent on them, they can ask for change, but they never have leverage. And now that child doesn't need to go buy their own house and find their own place to live. They just need a little bit of leverage. They need options. So they go stay at their cousin's every weekend for the whole weekend. And that builds back some leverage, right? We need to be able to say no. So if leverage is built locally, how do we connect this nationally? Well, you are here. This is coordinated national pushback for maximum local impact. So if you are tired of just diagnosing shit, if you are tired of protests without connecting to everyday life, this is what we are building. Join the Discord. And it's not about venting, it's about we are coordinating. We have one action each week. You've got options you can choose. You essentially either you raise your hand for something, I can be a part of this, I want to be a part of this. Then when somebody comes along and says, I've been thinking about starting a food buying group, and wait, there's 50 people in my state that already are buying some food locally, it gets them motivated, right? So that's really what it is that protests, we are so stuck economically we are so broke economically that it keeps us stuck politically. That's really what it comes down to. Because if you are working 40 hours a week and that barely gets you what you need to survive, well, you don't have to, you're not able to ask why, right? You got to go run on the treadmill again next week, next month. That's why it's every single week or every single month it resets, right? Every single month it resets. If you are feeling this, join us in the Discord. We have already got people in different states forming food buying groups. And if you're not part of forming it, you can raise your hand, right? Right? Absolutely. So we've got to understand our economic situation is tied to our political one. They keep us fighting, or they keep us broke, because if we had savings, we'd have leverage. That's what it really comes down to, right? If you have 3 months of savings, you can tell your boss no. If you don't have savings, you have to take that crappy job, right? You have to accept working at that shitty place because it's either that or go broke, right? That's what it is. So they make sure that we don't have any money because that's what keeps control. And they're all tied together because we feel this, right? Because what ends up happening is we understand this. You know, and everybody, it's what the funniest part is everybody's got different understanding based on their experiences. But when you point this out, you see people like John freak out, right? And I always think it's funny that I think that if somebody says words and that clearly frustrates you, well, that person has power over you. So I always thought it was funny when somebody not only lets somebody else have power over them, but shows it to all of us, right? So what this really is we all see that there's a problem, right? We all feel that there is a problem. So we start speaking out. We go, hey, 1% of Americans have as much as 90% of us. If we think of the economy as 10 people that baked 10 loaves of bread, one person took 5 loaves. Let me say that again. 1% of Americans have as much as 90% of Americans. If you imagine the American economy as 10 loaves of 10 people that baked 10 loaves of bread, that's one asshole taking 5 loaves. That person didn't even help. So, of course, the rest of us are more divided because there's 9 of us looking at 5 slices of bread. So we start not being all kumbaya and cooperating with each other, right? We start in each other's throats because we realize there's not enough. So that's why we argue left versus right, because of scarcity. Scarcity creates competition. And when we are competing, we're easy to divide. That's America today. So many of us see this. We realize the game is bullshit. So we start speaking out, right? We start changing our personal choices, doing what we can to not shop at corporations. Because if you have your eyes open, it's pretty easy to see that corporations have purchased the politicians via Citizens United, dark money, and super PACs. And politicians are money-grubbing a-holes that work for profit instead of for the people. And you can tell that because of the power that lobbyists have. And once again, if you don't believe this, I don't care. So what we are doing is we start speaking out, right? We say, what the fuck? It didn't used to be this way. Our parents didn't live this life. Our grandparents definitely didn't live this. My grandfather raised 5 children, had 2 cars, went on vacation a couple times a year, and he was a pinball machine mechanic. A pinball machine mechanic, right? I would like to know how many are not taking any money from PACs. That's my whole thing. Because what it is our political situation has been a burning building for a while. And no matter how good somebody's intentions are, when you run into a burning building, you're going to get some soot in your lungs. You're going to get a little bit dirty. And that's my intention, is I do not understand why people would walk in, right? So after we start speaking out, after we start changing our personal choices, we say, what the hell? There's nothing we can do to actually fix this. No matter, even if all of us changed our personal choices, right? We'd still go back and shop, we'd still be stuck with them because our rent goes to corporations. Our healthcare goes to corporations. Our transportation goes to corporations, right? That's all it really is. What do you mean, Purple Moon? So as we are speaking out, as we are changing personal choices, we recognize that there is nothing we can do, right? Corporations thing. But it's not about both parties. Politicians aren't in control. Corporations are. Politicians are there so that they are middle management, so that we don't realize that corporations and billionaires are actually running everything. So that's what it is. So, well, yeah, absolutely. But right now, they are the 2 that are the most powerful. That's part of it, is if we can't, what's up, 7-Eleven? If we can't, basically both of those parties have all the control. No, it can't, because the same way that small party will never have power. So we have to look at both political parties as corporations. They're just political corporations, right? Corporations don't give away power under any circumstances. So just like the corporations rigged the rules for the economy so that the small independent guys wouldn't be able to do anything, power-hungry red and power-hungry blue have already rigged the political system so that any kind of independent party would have to jump through massive hoops that would almost be impossible for them to get through to reach the status of them. That's what it really comes down to. So what we are doing is, rather than trying to force change through politics, we are forcing change through economics. because right now we could have 10 million, 20 million people protesting, right? But then the very next day, we'd have to go buy our food and our essentials and our housing from the same people we're protesting against. So what we can do is build alternatives. Then when we ask for change, we can say, change things or we're going to leave and we're going to go get our essentials from over there, right? That's where imagine every single county had its own steward for food, where that person's job was to make sure that the corporations weren't gouging us on food, because that's really what food distribution should be. It shouldn't be so that somebody can get rich off of us needing to eat food. It should be so that the most amount of people get the most amount of food that they need to survive, because that's how you build a sound society, right? That's how you build a secure society. That's the word I was looking for. Same with housing. People should have housing and it should be given to them so that they do not have to struggle for the essentials of life. Because there's two ways to set up a society. And this is what we've really forgotten about, is what is the point of a society, right? What is the point of a society? Is the point of a society so that a couple people can get massively rich while the rest of us work the majority of our waking hours, not for luxury, but for just what we need to live, our food, our housing, our healthcare, right? That's what it really comes down to. So if we can take back control of our essentials, the food, the housing, the healthcare, then we have some of our leverage back. And if we gain back some leverage, we can actually negotiate, right? No, John, but I'd really argue, ask yourself, what's the point of a society? Because what you're not understanding is that you can have society one of two ways, right? It's either right now where everybody works really hard, not for fantastic wealth, but everybody works really hard for their basic survival needs. So we've got everybody in America working very hard for their basic survival needs. And that is literally the problem why we have a mental health crisis in this country. Because who out here feels the underlying stress of, I might not afford to survive next month, even though half of my waking hours are already spent toiling away at trying to get the essentials, right? That's what this really is. Because what happens is, and John Wick, the reason I have it is we feel sorry for you. You are someone who has never asked why. And it really shows, because you are like a little kid on a playground, not understanding what's happening. Because you don't ask why. Why is it that somebody can work 40 hours a week and not have enough? What happens when Walmart underpays their employees? Why do they do that? Why are so many Walmart employees on medical assistance, even though Walmart brings in $1 billion? So that's what it is the contrarians always act all smug. But really, we feel bad for you because you simply are looking at, you're looking at the onion. I'm trying to do my Shrek impression without pulling back a layer. John, life is like, just like ogres. Life is like onions. And you can't just look at it. You can't, Shrek has got more than what's going on the outside. You got to peel back the layers, right? You got to peel back the layers. Yeah, John, because it's called the Dunning-Kruger effect. You can't understand it, so you think it's beneath you. So you do these little things. But that's right, Ivy. That's what it comes down to. And here's what's so funny. We don't like Democrats, right? You hear this and your brain's all confused because you think that we're leftists or progressives. No, we hate the system. Every single one. Get every politician out of there. Every single one. This is a movement for the people, because what you're not understanding is that you and I have more in common than the people up top. They want you. You play into their hand. You're a pawn for the elites. You're a pawn for the billionaires. You are the brainwashed, and we don't get mad at the brainwashed. We get mad at the brainwashers. Because eventually, when we build a system that works better for you, because this corporate system doesn't work for you. You've paid into health insurance that actively tries to deny you health care. That's freaking crazy. We all buy food that is actively bad for us, right? Right, Bubba? There it is. They keep us dependent. And that's why I love that speaking out always always creates people changing their personal choices, right? Speak out about cars. Maybe somebody's like, well, I'm going to do what I can to not use a vehicle. Boom, you find out that you're fucking stuck, right? Then we either get mad or we get building, right? Well, that's the thing, Ivy League. That's what pisses me off. People that work for corporations get paid so little, they have to shop at the places that offer the lowest prices. The places that offer the lowest prices are corporations, and we've effectively created a company town. Fuck, right? Right? It's so funny. So, and that's where, John, we are going to kick you here in a minute if you don't stop being such a contrarian. It's so funny because I imagine if somebody actually walked into a room with 30 people, would they act this way? Whoa, John, you're getting close to it. You're getting close, because one thing we talk about, what if they charged us for oxygen? They charge us for water. Water falls out of the sky. We have to pay for water. But, paying for oxygen, that's fucking crazy. Paying for oxygen, that's fucking crazy. Paying for water, oh, yeah. You know why? Because you were born with it. Yeah, it's called land, you fool. So I know 7-Eleven, right? It's almost like they've like come full circle, right? Boycott oxygen. I can imagine a time where a little baby is born and the doctor goes to the parent. I hate to do this, but it's a new policy of our hospital. We don't turn the oxygen on in the room unless you pay for it. So if you want your little baby to start breathing, it's going to be an extra $150, right? That's what it really is. So, y'all, if you are feeling this, let's get a no in the chat. Let's show this, the naysayers that it is how we all feel, right? And what I really like to point out is that America is like a big road. And we were all given a map and we're driving down that road. And it used to be that 10, 20% of people drove off the road, right? And we always said, what are they doing wrong? Why didn't those people follow the map? Well, now we've got 70 and 80% of people driving off the road. 208 million Americans don't have savings. And we've already talked about, if you don't have savings, you are not free. Because if you don't have freedom of choice, you don't have any freaking choice at all. So they make sure to keep us out of money. Pixie, I'm a big Australiophile, so I'm right there with you, my friend. Would love to stay connected. Because join this, we'll get an international portion going on our Discord. Oh, that is really funny. Discord link is in the bio. So I'm going to circle back, hit it from the top. Let's go. Everybody's arguing left versus right, but that is all a distraction because they understand as long as they keep us stuck economically, there ain't shit we can do politically. That's why protests haven't worked, because they know that on Monday morning, we go right back to feeding the system. So what we need to do is not stop protesting. It's to let me upgrade you. It's to upgrade that shit. Every single protest should be a way for us to find non-corporate options. The goal of every protest should be for people to connect locally and to leave with one non-corporate option. And I'm not just talking about soap or shirts or shampoo. I mean, I guess some of those are the essentials. I'm talking about the actual essentials, our food, our healthcare, our housing, our employment, those things. Once we start taking those back, we actually have power again. Because power is two things. Power is the ability to save money, and the power is the ability to choose where our hard work goes. Boycotting and striking. But they're both about leverage too, because boycotting is just having leverage over where you spend your money. But that's why corporations got rid of all the mom and pop shops. They knew if we didn't have any options, that we didn't have any leverage. So they got rid of all the options. There are no more mom and pop local general stores, grocery stores, hardware stores, pharmacies, newspapers, banks. They're all gone. That was the fabric of our community. That is what allowed us to vote with our dollar. And right now, if you don't have freedom of choice, if your only option is to go to a corporation, you can't say no. You comply. You're dependent on the system. They don't need to chain you up. They just need rent to be due every single month. They don't need to keep you somewhere where you're stuck and imprisoned. They just make sure that you pay your electricity bill and your communications bill and your car payment and your student loans and your mortgage all to the same corporations that you despise because you can't go anywhere else. When was the last time you had options, right? When was the last time you had options? Real options, not like 4 different stores that are owned by the same parent company, right? That's what it is. Appreciate you, Wheeljack. Join the Discord if you haven't yet. Because when you have real options, it's not 5 stores all owned by the same company. It's not 4 corporations that all pay the same lobbyists to rewrite the rules, so you have to stay dependent on them. What about your healthcare not being tied to your job? That's options. But that's gone, right? We tried to have healthcare not tied to our job, but that's basically been legislated out of existence. But here's what's uncomfortable. None of this shit happened by accident. Started with the economy. They completely took over the mom and pop shops. The people in charge, the corporations realized, oh shit, if we just run out the competition and leave the media the same, the media is going to call us out. We need to start buying up the media. So they bought up all the media so that we now fight over narratives instead of being able to point to the problem. Because here's the big thing. We all feel that there's a disease, but we all see a different reason for the disease. So we work towards a different cure. Divided people do not coordinate. And people that are not coordinated don't have any leverage. They can't negotiate. Who benefits from that, right? That's what we need to be asking more often. Who benefits? Because what we're doing is we're just explaining why 40 hours a week doesn't cover the basics anymore. And why even though we protest and the majority of us do not want this situation in our society, because only 30% of people voted for this, right? 75 million red, 75 million blue. That's 150 million people, or you can say 160 million. And then we only have 260 million people in America. So 100 million people didn't vote because they know Doesn't fucking matter. Neither side works for us. Both parties are two sides of the same coin, and that coin is in a billionaire's pocket. Because 40 hours a week not covering the basics anymore is on purpose. Because if you're working 40 hours a week and you're still barely struggling to afford the essentials, you don't really have a lot of time or energy to ask why, right? That's the thing. You don't have a lot of time or energy to ask why. Old ass, you are wrong. It absolutely used to. Just do a little bit of Googling. Because here's the funny thing. Rather than saying, hey, this person's had a different experience than I have, that's led them come to a different understanding. We should figure out, why do we have different understandings, right? But nope. Trump loves the uneducated, because then you say, I'm 65, never. And you don't ask why. Have we noticed that neither John or Old have asked why? They come in clutching their pearls, right? Clutching their pearls because it hurts their feelings, right? And we know that both of those people are white men, right? Because you can only sound so entitled through text messages. Because that's what it really comes down to. Because those are the ones that say, my feelings are right, right? Because what's so funny to me is that, I mean, this goes with my father too. He's right along that line, so I'm not written at it. Is that strength used to mean sacrifice. Whatever happened to that? Strength used to mean sacrificing for others. But now, anytime that we point out that things are going wrong, that, hey, there's this issue, and we think this is this or that, those same people that probably believe in honor and strength and duty, they like get their feelings hurt and they get upset. Because all that I am is somebody that is talking about my experience, right? I don't know what you mean, citizen pariah. I mean, I think my idea on ICE should be pretty clear. The current administration is only here because corporations chose their profits over democracy. They understood that we were going to push back against their bullshit, so they chose authoritarianism. Fascism always creates their own police force, because then they're not beholden to any of the old institutions, any of the old authoritarian figures, any of the old ways of doing things. They can bring in completely new people, right? And that's to establish the culture that they want. So that's what they're doing. They're creating fear, right? All that kind of stuff. So, yeah, this is where I don't talk about that, because it doesn't matter. It truly does not matter. They can do 1,000 different things like that, and there's nothing we're going to be able to do as long as we have to depend on the corporations for everything. Because who was sitting behind the president at the inauguration? Was it a bunch of children, celebrities, athletes? No. It was all of the same corporations, right? That's what it is. And that's why it's so funny. Rather than asking, how can two Americans have such completely different ideas on something, you are literally playing into, this is my whole thing. I just don't want to be manipulated. So when I start these conversations, I think, oh, if I just point fingers at my fellow Americans, my name's Corey, y'all. I don't control the economy. My name is Corey. I don't control the media. My name is Corey. I don't control politics. So rather than arguing about things, maybe we could just have a conversation to understand what the experiences and environment that each of us had that led us to come to different conclusions. Because to me, I don't like being manipulated. And it sure seems like anytime two Americans fight, that it really doesn't help us, that it only helps the billionaires. So that's kind of why I laugh at you and feel bad for you. Because to me, you are somebody who is being manipulated and tricked. And that's what it really is. And that's totally fine. Do you see one of us is saying, it's okay, pariah. It's all right. It's all right. We can have different viewpoints because I don't control policy, just like you don't control policy. And rather than getting mad at each other's viewpoints, if we actually talked, we might be able to take back some leverage. Remember, this is about leverage. And people that fight about left versus right don't understand that it's not about being right. It's about building leverage. And right now, if we have to choose corporations, we never have any leverage against corporations. And so protesting will never matter, because protesting without alternatives, we're just asking for change. We are begging for it. If we can have multiple options, then that's how we demand change. Because if we get 20 million people to protest, but then the very next morning we're all still dependent on the system, we aren't threatening anything. We aren't changing anything. We're not building any leverage. We just have a bunch of people expressing their feelings at the same time. But unless we can turn those expression of feelings into action, and that's where power is not votes, power is control over the essentials. Whoever controls your food controls you. Whoever controls your energy controls you. Whoever controls your healthcare and your medicine controls you, right? So this is what we need to not stop protesting, to upgrade that shit. A protest should be a recruiting ground for creating alternatives. Every rally, somebody leaves with a non-corporate alternative, whether for food or healthcare or housing or something that we need to live, or some sort of group that is forming to create and build those things. And that's what we call localism. Because when we have actual local options that aren't just corporate options, that's how we create leverage. And leverage changes the negotiation table. It does. Right now, we are going to the negotiation table and we have nothing. The strongest leverage we have is, hey, we are not going to participate. We've got enough savings that we are not going to participate in your BS, right? But we don't have enough savings. Then the next part of leverage is, we're just not going to shop with you. We'll keep working with you, but we're not going to buy anything of yours. That would be boycotting. But we don't have enough leverage to boycott because we don't have enough non-corporate options. If we did have options, we'd have leverage. And that leverage would give us the ability to negotiate from a position of strength. Because localism isn't about building a national empire. Localism is serving your community, right? Buddy, sorry, I didn't see your question earlier. That is a great question. So how do we get leverage and coordinate? So number one, we are already breaking out into groups on our Discord, right? That's what it really is you find people in your area. We connect with people locally. Once we connect with people locally, we form local groups. Forming local groups, then you map and find more local options. And after you map and find more local options, then you're able to boycott again even stronger. So that's what this really is. All actions support each other. And what we're doing is we're essentially trying to connect mass action with everyday life. So whether it is through rallies and protests, whether it is through local groups, the mass blackout, online blackouts, different things like that, So, buddy, that is a great question, though, because we build leverage by staying. So it's like we build leverage and coordinate by connecting. We connect in a few different ways. So this is basically a funnel for connection. We coordinate national pushback to maximize local impact. So you join us, you hop into the Discord server. There might be people in your state, there might be people in your area, they might not be yet. But this is about building. So we've got another No King's Day coming up at the end of March, right? We've got a giant general strike coming up. There are just all sorts of things. Every one of those mass actions will recruit more people to form local connections. Every single time we create more local connections, we build or find more local alternatives. Building or finding more local alternatives allows us the ability to boycott. And if we boycott and strike, shit, we can have more mass actions. More mass actions starts the cycle all over again. And then what this really does is it builds a system that works for people instead of against them. So eventually, we don't have to argue with people like Citizen Pariah or John Wick. It's so frustrating. It'll be like, though, us inventing a car and they're used to horses. Before they saw the car, they would probably argue till they're red in the face because a horse is what they've always known. But if we actually built the car and went driving past their house in a horseless carriage, honking the horn with 20 people in the back or whatever it is, they wouldn't be arguing with us, right? They would say, oh shit, I see how that works better. Why would I fight against that? That works better for me and for my family. I was only scared of it before because I didn't understand what they were talking about. Now that I see it, I want to try to use it because it seems like it works better for me. If you are feeling this, y'all, the Discord link is in the bio. We are not just talking about what's wrong. We are building what is right. Because honestly, we only feel like the system is this way because it's what we've been born into. That's why I talk about my 80s babies. Us 80s babies don't know shit. We don't know anything other than corporate systems. I heard my parents talk, not so much in the last like 25 years, but in like the late 90s and early 2000s. Maybe they realized their mistake. Man, there used to be local general stores. There used to be local grocery stores. There used to be local pharmacies. There used to be local newspapers, and I didn't understand why it mattered. Shit, most of America didn't understand why it mattered because it seemed like moving to corporate entities was just part of the way things went, right? Oh, rolling back the prices because they literally brainwash us. That's where economies of scale. That's a really nice way of saying we will always screw over small businesses, right? Like even there are laws in the books that say if you buy something with $1 billion, you can't get a huge discount over somebody that buys it with $100,000. Because think that is fundamentally anti-competitive. If somebody with $1 billion can always get a cheaper product than somebody with 100 grand, well, that person with $1 billion is always going to dominate them. There are literal laws in the book called the Robinson-Patman Act that says if it is uncompetitive for a company to offer lower prices based on how much they're spending, because it always screws over the little guy. Now, I'm not saying bulk discounts in general are wrong, but it's when it benefits large corporations. If you want to start selling chairs, well, Walmart can get the chair for $1 a pop. And meanwhile, you've got to pay $7 a chair. So even if you wanted to compete with the large corporations, we can't. So join the Discord if you haven't yet. Really appreciate everybody being here today. And what's funny is this gives hope. It really does. It gives me hope. It helps me understand that it's not this giant thing that we need to change. It's step by step, little by little. And it's not some of us giving it our all, right? It is all of us giving it some. So appreciate everybody so much. Try to be back on later if I can. Have a good rest of your Friday, y'all. Bye.